Hey there, welcome back to another review. This time it is of my most anticipated film of 2018, a film I had been waiting a long time for, 2 years too many, Deadpool 2. And I am really glad to sit here and tell you that for the most part, Deadpool 2 did not disappoint. I had an absolute blast with this sequel. I thought it was a spectacular sequel in multiple different ways. I would say I still prefer the first over the sequel because I feel like the sequel has a few more warts than the first film did, but I still really enjoy Deadpool 2. I still think it's pretty damn close to being as good as the first, and in some ways, it's better than the first film. And I'm going to try to do this without giving away as much as possible, which is going to be kind of difficult because there's certain aspects of this film that, in order to really kind of talk about it and really give you my in-depth thoughts on it, I'm going to have to spoil some things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this up into different parts. So right now I'm into the non-spoiler part, then I'll get into the spoiler part, and I'll let you know. I'll give you a spoiler alert. So before I get into some more just general thoughts on the film, I want to let people know this. If you were leery of the film because of what you heard from the screenings and from what you heard about certain characters, I would say, especially the character of Vanessa, I would say don't worry about it. It all works out in the end. Go check out the film. Still see the movie. I understand why you might be leery of it, but it all works out in the end. Trust me. And so it's one of those things where I was initially leery of that too, but the film ended up making that work, and I can't really talk about it that much until I get to the spoiler section. When I get to the spoiler section, then I will talk about it more. But anyway, I just thought this was a really inventive, creative sequel. This was not a lazy sequel. This is not a cash grab sequel. This is not one of those sequels where it's like, oh, we're not going to put that much effort into it. It isn't the case. That is not the case with this film. And it really did help that you had the same writers who worked on Deadpool came back and did the sequel. There's consistency here. And that's a big reason why the film works. Why the sequel is not a piece of shit is because you have the same guys who made the first film work so well. So, yeah, I'm really giddy to say that this gang of idiots, they did it again. They really did. Rhett Reese, Paul Wernick, and Ryan Reynolds. So, as long as these three are involved with any of the Deadpool films, I really think they're going to turn out fine. So it's one of those things where these guys, they get it. This gang of idiots, like I said in previous videos about Deadpool, they get it. They get the character. They get his sense of humor. They get his personality. They get the whole world. They know what they're talking about. They know how to bring this world to life, and they know how to be respectful to the source material. And that's really refreshing to see, where you have a group of writers who are consistently good. They're consistently great when it comes to, not just good, they're consistently great when it comes to the comic book material, when it comes to adapting the source material and bringing this character, this wacky, wild, and crazy, fucked up character in Deadpool to life, as well as his equally crazy, wild, and fucked up world. I felt the direction by David Leitch, or Leitch. I completely. His last name's kind of it's a tongue, not really necessarily a tongue twister, but I don't really know how to say it properly. But I'm just gonna call it David. Okay, so David here. David's direction is a huge improvement over Tim Miller's. I'm not saying Tim Miller didn't do a good job. He did a really good job for a first-time director, but you could tell that he's a mocap guy and really didn't have a lot of experience when it comes to directing big budget action sequences, or really a lot of action sequences. David has prior experience with John Wick, and it shows here. Deadpool 2 is an immense improvement when it comes to the action sequences and when it comes to the direction overall. The cinematography is gorgeous. There's really a great use of lighting that's used throughout the film by Jonathan Sela, but it also helps that David is working on it too, because David worked on Atomic Blonde, and his direction in that was also really impressive. So, and his handling of the action sequences. The action sequences are definitely one of the main things about Deadpool 2 that are better than the first. The opening action montage with 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton, which I absolutely loved that juxtaposition. I was not expecting that, and it worked so well, and it was so Deadpool, and it just worked so perfectly. But yeah, the opening montage with Deadpool being a mercenary all over the world, just taking out bad guys, that montage is epic. There's body parts flying, there's multiple decapitations, there's all kind of blood spraying. It is fucking nuts, and I love it. And there's a lot of other moments in the film where the action sequences are just so much more improved. The first, the battle with Cable and Deadpool in the prison, even stuff during the climax. Deadpool hitting a bunch of guys, soldiers with a brick, and there's just a lot of there's way more action in this, and it is a lot more exciting, thrilling. And if you felt like the action in the first one was underwhelming, this film definitely does not have underwhelming action sequences. Now, the film also returns, of course, a very talented cast, and the God's perfect idiot in Ryan Reynolds, who comes back to play Wade Wilson in Deadpool, the role that he was born to play. And he's just as irreverent and as endearing and as entertaining and as just absolutely lovable as he was in the first film. There's no tiresome performance here. There's none of that kind of thing where it comes back to the sequel and isn't able to recapture the same magic or the same energy. In a lot of ways, he actually has even more in some ways. It's such a joy to watch Ryan Reynolds play this role, because he loves it. And as a result, you can't help but love watching him play Deadpool and play this character of Wade Wilson. You also have Brianna Hilderbrand coming back as Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and you also have Colossus, and those two, they have their moments, but Negasonic, she's barely in the film, and that was disappointing, considering she was one of the best parts of the first movie, and she didn't really get to do that much, and she's just kind of there. Like, to her and her girlfriend, who is one of the new cast members as well, played by an actress named, I'm trying to find her name, hold on a second, Yukio, who's played by Shioli Kutsuna. But she doesn't do that much either. There's a lot of new cast members in this that don't have a lot to do other than Cable and Domino. A majority of the X-Force, they don't really do that much. They don't really get the chance to do that much, and I'll talk about that later in the spoiler section. And you even have like Juggernaut, who shows up, and which was really a nice surprise. Juggernaut in this is way better than he was in any of the other X-Men films. He actually looks like Juggernaut. So that was something that was really a sight for sore eyes. And you also have T.J. Miller, who comes back as Weasel, but he's toned down a little bit, has a little less lines, which is good, because he's not really... There are a few lines that he did that I kind of cracked up about, but honestly, I thought his character was more dead weight and a little bit more annoying in this film than he was in the first movie. There really wasn't the same chemistry between him and Ryan Reynolds, It just seemed like he was contractually obligated to be in this film and just showed up and said a few lines and that was it. His character was kind of an ass. And he was kind of an ass before, but it seemed like he was even more of an ass here. Morena Bacarrin is still absolutely gorgeous, and she still has some really electric chemistry with Ryan Reynolds. It's one of those things where initially it looks like things are going to be not going to work out, but they do, and I'll get to that later when it comes to that character. You also have Julian Dennison, who plays Russell Collins, who's Fire Fist, who is essentially kind of the villain of the piece. The kid did fine. He was alright. I didn't think he was like amazing or anything, but he was fine. Zazie Beetz plays Domino. I don't mind her performance, but the problem with this character is it's so far different from the comic book counterpart that I was a little bit on it. Her performance was fine. She had some nice nice rapport with Ryan Reynolds and other members of the cast, and she could do the physical stuff well, but her character reminded me way too much of Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie from Thor Ragnarok. It was a very similar sort of character and performance, and Domino's a much different. There's more to her, especially in the comics, and I miss the traditional Domino look in the comics with the black and white makeup and everything, and the black hair, and I don't know. I just felt like kind of a missed opportunity. Zazie Beetz is fine, but I just would have preferred to have seen a more traditional, true to the comics Domino than the one that was in the film. She was fine, but it was one of those things where because of Thor Ragnarok, her character just came across as being essentially kind of a copy of Valkyrie. And the only difference between the two is Valkyrie, was a heavy drinker, but they had very similar personalities and move sets and things like that. So yeah, it was a little bit of a letdown for me because I'm a big fan of Deadpool and Domino, and I don't know, she was fine, but I think it could have been better. But that's just me. I'm like one of the only people who feels that way when it comes to Domino. To be honest, I would have rather seen more of Negasonic Teenage Warhead with Deadpool because they already established a relationship in the previous film. And Domino was fine, and I would have been fine with. I also though would have been fine with saving Domino for a third film or for the X-Force movie or something, and giving Negasonic Teenage Warhead more screen time. Because Brianna Hilderbrand, she is a very talented actress. She was excellent in Tragedy Girls, and I felt it was a little bit of a tragedy that she just didn't get the chance to do that much in terms of action or in terms of her interactions with Wade. So, but Josh Brolin, also I have to mention Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin, he was perfectly cast as Cable. He's a great straight man to Ryan Reynolds as Wade Wilson. They have definite chemistry with one another. They work well together, and they work well off each other. I would have liked to have seen what Dolph Lundgren could have brought to the role, but that being said, Josh Brolin still brought it, and I can't wait to see more of these two in action together, because Cable and Deadpool comics are some of the best Deadpool comics. I love that series, and it's like seeing that series come to life on film, and it is really a treat. It's such a treat. I would say in terms of visual effects, the film definitely is an improvement over the first. You can tell that this film has a bigger budget, and it shows. There are some moments where the CGI is a bit kind of wonky, but overall it's a definite improvement. And I felt that the cinematography and the direction, there were some really creative bits that you didn't really see in the first film, because this is Tim Miller, who's a first-time director. So here you have a guy who's done stuff before and does some really cool stuff. Like one scene in particular is how Deadpool comes up with a very creative way of driving a car, and I thought that the way that was shot was amazing and very unique. And so there's a lot of different shots like that peppered throughout the film. I felt the score though was a step down from Junkie XL's score from the first film. Tyler Bates' score is almost non-existent and really doesn't really add anything to the film. The music that adds to the film are the songs that are used for the soundtrack. Dolly Parton's 9 to 5, Aha's Take on Me, the original version as well as a cover version, a slower version, which, man, when that version is used in a particular scene in the film, I almost cried. Like, it was so perfect, and it really did tug at my heartstrings hard. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. And also Pat Benatar's We Belong, and Cher's Turn Back Time, If I Could Turn Back Time, that was used in the mid-credits sequence, which was perfect, and I loved it. I unabashedly love that song anyway, and it fit so well. It fit tight. It was a total snug fit. Like it was like red spandex on Ryan Reynolds' ass in terms of how tightly snug it fit to the film and to that particular sequence. I will never think of Cher's If I Could Turn Back Time the same way again after seeing Deadpool 2. It's so perfect and absolutely fantastic use of music. So, yeah, a lot of the music, the best parts are with the score. Tyler Bates did some kind of dubstep stuff, which is kind of a repeated gag, and might as well put a gag in my mouth, apparently, because I'm just flubbing all over the place. I'm just fucking up. But, really, like I was saying earlier, could have used some more variety with the dubstep stuff. It's there, but I understand what they're going for, but it's kind of the same beats, and that was a bit kind of disappointing. But yeah, Tyler Bates, he's done some great music in the past, but this score, there really isn't a lot to it. I mean, there's one bit with the choir in the background that's going, "Holy shit balls, holy shit," and it's kind of it's funny, I have to admit. So that was pretty clever and entertaining, but other than that, like, the rest of the score is just nothing to me. It's definitely a step down. Honestly, more than a step down, quite a few steps down from Junkie XL's score. The editing by Dirk Westervelt, Craig Alpert, and Elizabeth Ronalds de Tor. That's also something that's a step or two down from the first film. I would say the editing in this, it does have some moments where it's a bit janky and it takes you out of the film a little bit. There are other moments where the editing is fine, but I definitely felt the first film had way better editing. And when it comes to the writing, I definitely want to mention, of course, the stuff that a lot of people are going to think about when it comes to the film. The jokes. I mean, the jokes, much like the first film, there's some jokes that don't land, but when they do, man, they land hard, and they are laugh-out-loud hilarious. This film does even more meta humor than the first film did, and at times it kind of overdoses a little bit on it, and gets a little bit tiresome, but there are other times where it definitely works. I would have liked to have seen some more movie and pop culture references. There was a lot of jokes that were just a lot of meta stuff, and a lot of Marvel and DC jabs, and there were some that were not. There were some movie references, like when Colossus says, "Come quietly, or there will be trouble," and then the Fire Fist says, "You stole that from RoboCop," which I love that, because hey, I'm a huge RoboCop fan, so that was funny. And there was a bit where Deadpool. Where Wade's in the prison and this one prisoner grabs him and he's like, "Who are you?" And then he goes, "I'm Batman." that was good. I cracked up at that. And the one-eyed Willie joke was great. And there were a few other ones. I would say the moment, though, when it comes to the comedy that had me rolling was the mid-credit sequence. The mid-credit sequence is one of the funniest things I have seen on the big screen in years. I was laughing so hard that I almost fell out of my seat. It was that fucking funny, and it was such a cathartic thing. I could not believe what I was seeing, and I'm not giving that away. You got to see the film for yourself to see that. Definitely stay for the mid-credits. There's nothing after the end credits, but the mid-credit scene, you have to stay. You cannot miss that. Trust me. But anyway, the other gags, they were good and they were fun. There was one bit, though, where I thought went on way too long. And that was near the end when Deadpool is having some really extended moment. And I thought it was just went on forever. And I understand why they were kind of going for it, what they were trying to go for. But it just didn't click for me. But other than that, for the most part, the comedy's really solid. Definitely the funniest film I've seen this year. And when it comes to the film's pacing, it's 119 minutes, so it's a little bit longer than the first film, but not by much, because the first film was only a little bit over an hour and 40-something minutes. I would say the first film has better pacing. That's another thing I felt the first film did a better job at. The first act of this is a bit kind of clunky, especially when they get to the icebox. But once it gets out of that and picks up pace and picks up speed, it really does not slow down. And it is not a film that is going to really bore you or anything. I never thought it was boring. I just felt it was a bit kind of clunky in the first act. But once you got past that, it was smooth sailing. But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed Deadpool 2. I thought it was a delicious chimichanga, and I cannot wait to go back for seconds. Forgive me, like, I'm just kind of flubbing some things, not just because I'm a fuck up, but also because sometimes it's just, this is the kind of film that's kind of hard sometimes to review, because this is like seeing my dreams come true. The first film was seeing a dream come true that I've been waiting to see for years, and seeing a Deadpool film become a reality, it was just amazing. And it was even more amazing to see it be done the way that it was done, with care and with respect to the source material. And then to see it happen again, to see lightning get caught in a bottle again, it's just one of those things that does. It leaves you speechless. It's kind of hard to put into words, like, how awesome that is. It's such an awesome feeling to see Deadpool films and to see them be so witty and so wonderful and so true to the character. It's so much fun. And so yeah, if you like the first film, you're more than likely going to like the second. I think there are going to be a group of people who weren't that big on the first one who are going to enjoy the second one even more than the first. There's even been aspects like that. So I totally believe that if you were kind of on the first one, I think you might actually end up liking the second one a lot more, especially with the action sequences. But anyway, I don't really know what else to say about it, except I give it my highest marks. I highly recommend it. That's it for my non-spoiler portion. Now we're getting into spoilers. Spoiler alert, giant, big, flashing spoiler alert, okay? If you haven't seen the film, I'm going to ruin it for you right now. All right? So I would say just skip this, and thank you for watching. But anyway, when it comes to spoiler portion, first off, I got to talk about Vanessa. I got to talk about Vanessa and X-Force and stuff like that. I was kind of iffy on the film when I was watching it. When I was watching the movie, there were things I loved about it, the action, a lot of the jokes and the gags and things like that. Especially one visual. I mean, the appearance of the X-Men was hilarious. I love that. Wade's talking about, oh, we can't afford any money. Like, why can we only afford money for like 1 or 2 X-Men? Like, what is this? I thought we had a bigger budget or something. Like, what? And then like, where is everybody? And then the camera pans to a room that's literally right next to Wade, and it's got all the X-Men in it, and they just look at the camera and then close the door. I thought that was hilarious. There's a cameo by an actor. I think it's a Brad Pitt, or I think it was Brad Pitt, and he plays one of the X-Force characters called the Vanisher, which is pretty funny. And so there were other. So yeah, I wanted to mention those as well. But when it comes to the character Vanessa, like I said, those were gags that I just loved. I thought were great. But with Vanessa, they did the whole kind of slasher movie thing with this character, where they killed her off in the first 15 minutes, and then had her death be the catalyst or whatever for Wade to just kind of give up on life. And I was kind of that really, initially I was like, I knew that was going to happen because it had already been spoiled for me, but it didn't really upset me that much because it kind of grew on me, because I was like, how are they going to handle it? And I felt the way they handled it was kind of cheap, so it hurt the film a little bit for me while I was watching it. And then when they got to the X-Force sequence with Thunderstruck by AC/DC, and the X-Force shows up, and most of them die violently, I thought that could have been a fun idea, but I just felt it was it was a joke that went on too long, and it was a bit too over the top. And I don't know, as someone who's read the X-Force comics, to see Shatterstar just be treated like he's just an asshole and then get cut up by helicopter blades, that was a little bit that was definitely, I don't know if letdown is the right word. Well, yeah, it is, but disappointing is a better word for it, because a letdown is like a lighter version of disappointment. That was disappointing. That was one of those things where I was like, why did you do that? In the ads, in one of the trailers for the film, you have Terry Crews punching guys out and Shatterstar getting people with his swords, and none of that is in this movie. So it's one of those things that's like, why did they have to go that route? It felt like it was just shock humor, and I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of that. And the first film didn't really have a lot of that in it. So that was just we didn't really need to go that route. But, and of course, poor Peter. He's fine though, by the end of the movie, but everyone else is fucked. So if you liked Terry Crews, or if you liked the Shatterstar guy, he has a dick in this movie, but in the comics he's not really that much of a dick. I just kind of felt like the writers were just kind of like, fuck the X-Force, fuck the X-Force. X-Force sucks. It was just one of those it's just, fuck the X-Force. It was just like, I don't know. That rubbed me the wrong way. It really did. That was just a little bit too much cynicism. A little bit too much shock humor. But, of course, Domino makes it out okay because her superpower is that she's extremely lucky. But, yeah, that was, And then with Vanessa, like I said, I felt it was cheap. So, there were moments where I was watching the movie and I was enjoying it, having a good time, but I was really starting to, kind of not be so keen on the film while I was watching it, because of the stuff with the X-Force and Vanessa. But as the film went on, and then after the mid-credit sequence, everything was pretty much fixed okay. I can deal with the X-Force dying. They'll have certain characters brought back for the X-Force film, but it's just one of those I could have done without what they did and the way that they handled it. I just felt it was it was overkill. It was literally overkill. But with Vanessa, everything's fine with that character, so that automatically made the film so much better to me, because the mid-credit sequence was with help from a time travel machine, and Cher ends up making everything all right with Vanessa and Wade. And I know some people will be like, that undoes his lessons that he's learned and whatever. I don't think it really undoes any of the lessons that he learned. He still knows and realizes that family is not an F word, So, and he realizes that he sees the importance in life, and he becomes a better man. So he just realizes, I don't want to have to. I mean, how does it make Cable did the same thing pretty much? So Cable did the same thing to help rewrite the timeline, and Deadpool does it, and it's not okay. It's like one of those things. It's like, why? Why can't Deadpool have the happy timeline? Why is Cable the only one who's allowed to have that timeline in the future where his family is still alive? Why can't Wade have that too? And speaking of that, that mid-credit sequence is fucking brilliant. The X-Men Origins Wolverine moment, that I could not believe my eyes when I saw that. My eyes almost popped out of my head, and I just laughed my ass off. I laughed so fucking hard, man. It's such a cathartic thing to see, and everyone else in the theater was cracking up too. It was so great. I don't mind Green Lantern, but I still thought the gag when Deadpool shoots Ryan Reynolds in the head and says, "You're welcome, Canada." I thought that was fun too. But my favorite part there though is definitely the X-Men Origins Wolverine moment where Deadpool shows up and just fucking shanks that stupid fucking Baraka Pool and then shoots him in the ass multiple times. So great. When it comes to some other spoilers, I did not like how they handled certain characters, like Black Tom Cassidy. He's a great character in the comics, and he's very tight with Juggernaut, but that really wasn't kind of the case here. And he was just he's just a gag. He was just a running gag. And then he gets shot in the head. So I was like, well, that's a waste of Black Tom Cassidy. So if you're a fan of that character, man, do you get fucked up? you don't. Yeah, you get nothing. Except a lot of disappointment, and the guy gets shot in the head. Maybe he'll get brought back to life later. Maybe they could rectify that. He'll have an eye patch or something from when he got shot in the face. But it remains to be seen if that's going to be the case or not. And when it comes to any other spoiler aspects of it, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to talk about that I had to spoil some things in order to discuss, and I really can't think of any. Well, yeah, I mean, the ending where Wade takes forever to die, that's what I was mentioning earlier, which I felt like that went on way too long, and I really did. Like, I was just like, just come on, this joke is going on way too long. End it, please. But that was one of the few moments in the film that didn't really click with me. The whole thing with him having baby legs and like a baby dick and whatever, like it was kind of funny for a bit, but that also went on a bit too long for me. I liked the moment in the first film where he had the little baby hand, and that didn't go on for that long. Here it's just extended, and you constantly see him with baby legs, and they do the whole baby dick thing, and it was just a little bit. It was overkill, like it was like the X-Force sequence. But yeah, I mean, other than those few things, like those are the main problems I have with it. Pacing, the first act. Now that I mentioned the first act, I definitely want to mention this. I love the James Bond themed opening credits sequence. It's hilarious. The whole credit sequence is totally just writing on the screen what everyone is thinking. Like, holy shit, did they just do that? What the fuck? Presented by, presented by this guy, oh, that's different. Film by, because it's not the same director, and I love the bit where it says from the guy one of the guys who killed John Wick's dog. So I thought that was pretty funny. But I love that. I love the James Bond themed opening, and I like that song by Celine Dion too, Ashes. But yeah, I definitely had to mention that. But yeah. Overall, yeah, there's only, like I said, only issues I had with those little bits. This is the end of the spoiler section, so I'm just gonna give my final thoughts on the film. Overall, I feel Deadpool 2 is a delicious, deliriously entertaining sequel, just like the first film. I view Deadpool 2 like I do RoboCop 2. Both films I really enjoy, but I think just like RoboCop and RoboCop 2, I felt that RoboCop is still a better film. It's as a whole, it's a better movie than RoboCop 2, but I still really enjoy RoboCop 2, and there are elements of RoboCop 2 that I felt were better than the first film, and I feel the exact same way about Deadpool 2. I think this film has elements that surpass the first movie. The action sequences, the direction, the mid-credits sequence, but there's other elements to it that are not quite as good. The pacing, the editing, the overall story structure, the certain beats that I felt were definitely a lot more effective in the first film. This one had a few more lumps, moments where it kind of didn't work that well, but it ended up kind of working out in the end, but kind of not, because still other elements weren't quite as developed, or weren't honestly done as well as they could have been. But it's still a very satisfying sequel, and I don't know what else to say about it, except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars, I would give the film 4 out of 5 stars. Anyway, thank you for watching, and as always, I will see you later. And remember, family is not an F word.